Dude, the biggest, baddest mini bike, moped, e-bike, it's coming, and it's called the Flash from Eunorau. Class 3 speed, dual suspension, and a ridiculous 220 miles of range. Now this might be the first market-ready triple battery electric bike ever. Indiegogo starting price of $1,499. Sounds too good to be true, but they're calling it the one e-bike to rule them all. But looking at the finer details, there are a couple of caveats. Now this is a big bike with some big selling points, but first we have to separate what we're talking about here. Now the Flash comes in three main versions. The first one is the mid-drive dual suspension. That's the one you're going to see on a lot of the advertising. And then they have two different hardtails. One of them has a single rear hub motor. The other hardtail adds a front. So that's two motors on the third one. So this and the battery options will be a main driver of the price for these bikes. The starting price is actually very competitive, especially with the crowdfunding campaign that's going on right now. But before we get too heavy into the details, let's talk about some of the fun stuff. Now, first up, can this bike deliver 220 miles of range? I think so, but there are a few things that make that harder. Now, it's quite normal for bikes like these to tip the scales at 100 pounds. Eunorau says that it starts at 92 pounds, but I'm a little skeptical. Adding two hefty batteries into the mix is easily going to get this towards the $150 category. Now, on top of that, if you plan on carrying a second person, which the bike totally could do that, then that 220 miles of range would be even harder to achieve. Now, this is not really what they're counting on because everybody else in the industry, they do the same thing. They look for the best case scenario. And with that, I think 220 is achievable. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the battery options because there are a few things to unpack here. Now, first off, the bike is using a 52-volt system for all the bikes all around. That's really good for modularity in case you wanted to upgrade at a later time. Now the standard battery, which is underneath the seat, is the 52 volt 16 amp hour battery. The second one goes on top, and this is a big one at 52 volts 21 amp hours. And the third down tube battery is a 52 volt 17 amp hour pack. Now at this rate, the peak would be 52 volts and 63 amp hours, which is a ridiculous 2.8 kilowatt hours of energy. And to give you a sense of scale, that's around 10 times more than a small e-bike battery and double the capacity of a second generation Prius battery. Anyways, this is a beast of a bike that's eating up, oh gosh, I'm just going to throw a ballpark out there and say 25 watts per mile on the hungry side. That's still 112.32 miles of range. Now, with a little bit of pedaling effort, it wouldn't be hard to ease that number quite a bit. In a place like Salt Lake where I live, I could probably go back and forth across the valley 3 or 4 times. And Eunorau says that they tested this going from New Jersey to New York. Now, if you can believe it, that's really gearing up to be a game-changing electric bike. Now, with a bike that's heavier than a bighorn sheep, it does need some scaled-up components. I talked to Eunorau about all the gory details, so let's get into it. First, the good news. The dual suspension Flash has a coil-over suspension in the back and also a suspension fork with 100 millimeters of travel. And that's a really good fit that I'll say. You don't have to go too overboard because it is going to be on the road. It's also equipped with a set of road tires, CST Scouts to be precise. Now the brakes on this behemoth of a bike are quad piston hydraulic calipers, which that's an A+ for Eunorau. 180 millimeter discs, which is also really good. Now the headlight is standard on all models, and lastly the video shows an updated display, which also gives access to the Eunorau app for additional ride metrics and so on. By the way, that fairing that goes over the headlight, that comes with the fender package, so if you like that look, make sure you can get fenders. Now the bike includes one 52 volt 4 amp charger, which is really nice. It's pretty fast. You can either buy a second charger yourself, or you can get a second charger with the purchase of the third battery. So if you buy 2 batteries, you still got 1 charger to use with those. Payload capacity for the entire bike is 400 pounds, and the rear suspension is set from the factory, and all models come in 2 different colors, the ones that are shown right here. I have to say a word about pedaling because this is where the bad news is, not just for this bike, but for all sorts of mini bikes or moped bikes. I mean, they're not made for pedaling, let's be honest. Even though they show gears on the campaign, Eunorau told me that they opted for a single speed on all models, even the mid-drive. Now to me, this is inconsistent with the 220-mile claim. With a single speed, the rider has a very limited range to put effort into the ride and take stress off the battery. At this rate, I would still guess over 100 miles of range at full throttle, but the motor will be doing most of the work. Well, pretty much all of it. Now, speaking of motor, the hub motors actually fit inside of a set of solid wheels, which is a pretty cool upgrade, although they are going to make the bike feel very stiff, especially because we're also talking about a hardtail with that combination. Now, if you're watching this video in the near future, you can get to follow the links below and get on that sweet crowdfunding pricing. But what happens after that? Well, I will say that pretty much all of Eunorau's offerings are competitively priced. There are bikes exactly like the Eunorau Spectre and the Fat HS models that are selling for double or sometimes more from other bike companies. So I have full confidence that Eunorau will have good service, pricing, but I am a little bit leery on that gearing. I know it's not their fault in particular, but it's just something that's a pet peeve of mine. What do you guys think? You can let me know in the comment section below, and you can check out the links for the Indiegogo campaign, save up to $1,000, and get in early enough to secure your place in e-bike history. I'm Mikey for Blue Monkey Bicycles, and I will see you on the later.